Are you struggling to land your interviews? You have the qualifications, you are saying all the right things, but you're still missing the mark. Let's talk about interview etiquette.
A job interview is a crucial time in a person's life, after all. For you, it is an event that will determine whether you have a job or not. Some people put too much trust into their CV, but that's not enough. Having your abilities and qualifications on paper does not mean that somebody will hire you for the job. Many people with the right qualifications don't get the job because they neglected the interview, hoping that their excellence on paper will carry them through. How you present and carry yourself during an interview goes a long way to tell what kind of person you are and how much you deserve the job. There are codes of conduct that governs the behavior of people who are invited for an interview. How much you master and abide by this etiquette will affect whether you get the job or not.
Here are some basic tips to implement proper etiquette so you can land your next interview. Number 1, dress appropriately. How you look is the first point of physical contact between you and the interviewer. Your credentials are not enough. If your credentials were enough, you would get the job the minute that they looked at your CV or your resume. So don't underestimate the fact that the way that you look actually has so much weight and bearing in your interview. It's also important to remember that dressing well and dressing appropriate is two completely different things. Ask yourself what is appropriate for the industry that you're interviewing for, and then ask yourself what is appropriate for an interview. This will vary depending on the industry that you are interviewing for, so I'm not going to give you any examples today. Tip number 2, pay attention to your basic hygiene. Hygiene is something that is always going to matter, but especially when you are wanting to show up in your best form and put your best foot forward. This means you will need to brush your teeth. This also means that you need to comb your hair. This also means that you need to wear deodorant. Ladies, if you are going to wear makeup, make sure that it is light and fresh, nothing too extreme, too contoured, or too heavy. Men, if you have a beard, this is where you're going to want to put on a beard oil and tame everything down. You're not wanting to look bushy and wild or as if you just came out from chopping some logs. If you are going to wear fragrance, ensure that it is light and fresh. I know some people are a little bit, they don't like the concept or the idea of wearing fragrance, but if you do wear fragrance, do keep it light. Don't wear your strongest oud into the interview. And last but not least, avoid coffee. Not only is coffee a diuretic and you don't want to be adding any more pressure, any more anxiety to the situation, but coffee does tend to linger on the breath, and that's not going to give you the freshest approach in your interview. Now, number 3, you are going to want to ensure that you are punctual. Now, punctual doesn't mean arriving excessively early, and it obviously doesn't mean arriving late. So what is punctual? The right time to arrive means to arrive somewhere between 5 and 15 minutes before your scheduled appointment time. This not only allows you to freshen up, but it allows you to have the mental clarity to gather your thoughts and be cool, calm, and collected before you go into your interview. Number 4, greet the interviewer. It's very easy to stand there nervous, holding your hands, but say a good morning and then use the interviewer's name. You should have note of this within any email correspondence that you may have had that set up the interview time. If it wasn't an email correspondence, do ensure to remember to ask the person on the phone who it will be that is interviewing you. Then when it comes to the moment to meet this person, you could say good morning, their name, or good afternoon, their name. This will also flatter the interviewer that you've taken the time to remember who they are, and subconsciously you will be gaining favor with them because you are using their name. Tip number 5, practice good handshakes. We all know that body language is a thing, and therefore, if we don't practice proper handshakes, you are going to be conveying a message to the person, the interviewer, that you might not want to convey to them. If your handshake is too weak, you might convey that you are shy, you are timid, and you're not assertive. If you shake their hand too hard, you might convey that you are aggressive and loud and someone that can't be in an office or team type of situation.
The handshake should be firm enough to show that you exude confidence, and it should last about 3 or 4 seconds. Absolute maximum. Actually, it is more about 2 or 3 shakes. A good handshake is where both persons' thumbs are uppermost. Neither has the upper hand. Read up on the body language of handshakes. They are a key indicator of some people's psychology. Release the handshake as soon as you feel the other person withdrawing.
Now, tip number 6, sit down when asked. Remember how we were just talking about body language? Well, so much happens between you and another person that sometimes words aren't even conveyed. I have found that often when I go into an interview, they'll gesture to the chair. They won't actually say, "You can take a seat." So do be aware to these cues, these gestures, this body language, and only sit when you have been told to. Sometimes you might be going to sit in an area or a chair that was actually meant for the interviewer and not for you. So do ensure that you wait for this moment and sit down when it is appropriate to do so. Now, tip number 7 is to address people by their titles. We touched on this a couple minutes ago, but as I mentioned, you are going to want to address people by their name, but also if they have a title. If you are interviewing with a professor, say professor. If you're interviewing with a doctor, say doctor. It shows a sign of respect, especially when this person is your senior. Tip number 8, turn your phone off. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about this. Turn it off. The world isn't going to die if you turn your phone off for a half an hour. If you leave it on vibrate, like for example, my phone is on do not disturb right now. My dad calls every day around this time. And if he knows that if he calls through twice, it will start to buzz. People can still hear a vibration, so just turn the phone off to avoid all problems. Tip number 9, make eye contact and smile. Now, when I say make eye contact, that doesn't mean that you're just gonna be, that's so awkward, right? But when you make eye contact, you can look at the person, and then if you're talking about something or you're thinking, automatically look to the right when we are thinking back on something, or perhaps you are looking at multiple people in the room. You don't want to be staring, but you want to be making eye contact. Now the same thing goes for smiling. If I was just talking to you like this all the time, you might not be able to take me seriously because I just have this goofy smile on my face all of the time. So much so, I had somebody correct me in one of my previous videos where I was talking about a funeral, and they said, "Nicole, perhaps you might want to reconsider smiling so much when you're talking about something like death and a funeral." And although I was recounting a funny memory at this funeral, I did take what this person said on board. If that was you, leave a comment in the comment section down below. But it's the same for when you are interviewing. You want to be smiling and showing that you're approachable, but don't over smile that the person can't even take you seriously. I've mentioned this in many videos, but I love looking at the royals for demonstrations and role models in how to do this properly. When you look at how they are speaking to someone, they are maintaining amazing contact. They're smiling and nodding along to show that they are hearing and acknowledging and understanding what the person is saying, and it makes them feel seen and heard, and you will want to do this in an interview as well. Now, tip number 10, our final tip. Don't interrupt the interviewer. This is such a bad habit for many of us. Allowing someone to finish is basic manners, and it's such an easy bad habit to get into the habit of. Here are some of the reasons you might not want to interrupt somebody. First being, you might answer the wrong question. The second reason of being, often when you are thinking about what you are going to respond with, you're not actually taking in what the person is still saying to you. And so you've kind of tuned them out, and you're thinking about what you're going to respond and not actually taking in what they're saying. And you might be missing something really important. So I am really trying to be intentional about this by taking in what somebody is saying and then pausing and then forming my answer. That is going to make you look patient. It's going to make you look that you are putting thought into your responses and not just acting on a whim. Now, in the next video, we are going to be talking more about how to interview with proper etiquette. I hope you will join me.